बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। अस्सलाम वालेकुम स्टूडेंट्स। उम्मीद करता हूँ कि आप सब लोग खैरियत के साथ होंगे। And I welcome you all here today to the 6th lecture of Consumer Psychology. Students, today we are going to start the second chapter, and the title of the second chapter is Consumer Research. However, before I take you to the main subject line of the second chapter, let me give you a brief review of what we discussed in the first chapter over the last 5 lectures. I am doing this to build your basic understanding and build up the logical sequence from the first chapter into the second chapter, and build up your perspective on the consumer research as well. Students, I started out the first chapter of consumer psychology with a basic question to you, that why do we buy things? And I asked you this question to introduce the basic perspectives of of 3 business orientations that companies have been used over the time period of the last 150 years to conduct their business. Companies essentially were also concerned that why do people buy things? And the very first answer that laid down the foundation of the first business concept was that consumers buy things because they want to use different kinds of products. However, in order to purchase and use different kinds of products, they would be interested in buying cheap products. So owing to this concept, companies focused over building up products that would be cheaper in price and that could be used by a larger number of people. And this kind of concept was called production concept. However, owing to production concept, companies kind of disregarded the needs and desires of a number of consumers out there who actually were capable of purchasing more expensive products if more expensive features were loaded in their products. So, owing to production concept, companies could not actually concentrate over the needs and desires of the large number of consumers out there. So, essentially, this kind of perspective did not help the companies to get their products introduced into the larger segments of the society. After the production concept, companies started thinking that maybe consumers are interested in purchasing extremely refined products. And when it came down to the question of extremely refined products, companies started concentrating over uploading more and more refined and sophisticated features into their products. And by doing so, they found out that the cost of the product has increased while the consumers who wanted to purchase the expensive products, their needs and desires were satisfied. However, this wild goose chase of making the products more and more sophisticated eventually ended up in dissatisfying even the consumers who could purchase those products, because a lot of times the unnecessary features were added into the products and consumers were not satisfied with them. So essentially, the production concept also, the product concept also did not satisfy the consumers. So there was a third concept that came to be used by the companies, which was called the selling concept. Selling concept, it seems on the face of it, was a bit of frustration at failing to understand what do the consumers want when they purchase different kinds of products. So the company started thinking that in order for the consumers to purchase things, they need to be aggressively pursued. Students, owing to the selling concept, companies started training their sales personnel in the techniques of hard selling, and these sales personnel would go from consumers to consumers and convince them into purchasing the products. However, once again, the consumers were left dissatisfied because after using the hard selling techniques, consumers were able to purchase many different products, but when they would start using those products, they would be dissatisfied, and dissatisfied consumers would not come back to purchase the same products again. This eventually helped companies understand the consumers in better and better ways. Different concepts had been tried, and that ended up in frustration. So finally, $1 million question was started being asked in the business scenarios, which was, why not we make products that consumers actually desire? So the $1 million question was that what are those products that consumers actually desire and require? Now, this question helped the companies exclusively focus over the consumer perspective as to what does the consumer want in their products. And this laid down the foundation of subjects like consumer behavior as well as consumer psychology. Consumer psychology eventually consolidated itself in the shape of a separate and distinct branch, and it drew on its subject material from many different branches of the psychology. So owing to the marketing concept, companies started thinking that let's go touch the consumers before even making the products and ask them that what is it that they want. Now, this lent a brand new and brilliant spirit to the entire business industry, and more efforts were organized to understand the consumers in better and better ways. And in doing so, in the spirit of the marketing concept, companies started using three basic tools of the marketing concept. We studied these three basic tools in the first chapter, and these three tools were called market segmentation, market targeting, and market positioning. We defined that market segment is the process of dividing the market into groups of consumers who have similar acquired needs. So this helped companies concentrate not on just a single individual consumers, but they were able to classify consumers into many different groups. And then they will tap into the group's requirements and needs, and they'll understand their needs in better ways. And then they will come up with the bulk of products that would help satisfy the needs of the consumers existing in different groups. We then discussed the topic of market positioning. And we defined market positioning as the distinct image of a product that exists in the mind of the consumers. And I asked you some basic questions regarding the market positioning concept as well. And these basic questions were just to help you identify the positioning of different products that exist in your mind. And one of those questions was, what comes to your mind when I speak the statement, a carbonated soft drink of black color being drunk by a cricketer? I'm sure different brands are coming into your mind, but whatever brand comes to your mind is actually the position of that brand that exists in your mind, that this company has created in your mind. We then discussed the concept of market targeting. After the market has been divided into different segments and proper positioning strategies are designed, which will be addressed in the promotional strategy of the company, then market is targeted. Those groups of the people or the consumers that exist in the market, then promotional strategy is used to target them and to take the product to their heart and mind so that the product could create a place in their minds and they could come back over and over again to purchase this product. At this point, students, we also discussed the concept of marketing mix. And we identified that marketing mix is the process, a company's products or services offerings that it has for the different consumers and different tools and methodologies that it uses to accomplish the exchange. We further found out that marketing mix consists of the four basic elements, and these are the very important elements, though the list has sometimes been increased, but the four elements remain always the basic elements. And these are, number one, the product, number two, the place, number three, the price, and number four was the promotion. And we figured out that in order for a company to effectively launch a product in the market, they need to play with different handles of the marketing mix very, very effectively. After we studied the marketing mix, we then went on to studying the three drivers of the marketing concept, which is that whatever tools have been used to gather up the information and whatever different methodologies have been used to take the product to the consumers in the market, now the three drivers of the marketing concept will help the companies take the products, develop their place in the minds of the consumers. And these three drivers of the marketing concept were customer value, customer satisfaction, and customer retention. We define customer value as the ratio between the resources that a consumer spends in order to obtain a certain product. Customer value, we found out that it's a very personal affair, and it differs from individual to individual. This is more or less a personal image about a product that a consumer carries in his mind. And when we talk about customer value, we are actually talking about the perceived benefits which are attached with the usage of the product. And when we talk about the resources that are expended to purchase that product, then we are also talking about not only the financial aspects, the economical aspects, and the product benefits, as well as a lot of psychological factors are also included. We discussed the concept of customer satisfaction, and we defined customer satisfaction as an individual's perception of the performance of a product in relation to his or her expectations. We defined that a customer will be satisfied if his experience meets with his expectations, and a customer will be dissatisfied if his experience does not meet with his expectations. And we finally went on to discussing the concept of customer retention. Customer retention is the process of making it in the best interest of the consumer to stay with a certain company, which means that companies would make their products so attractive, and not only that, they would add certain attractive services with the products that would serve the consumers so well and on their perceived needs that the consumers would not think about switching into another company or brand or a product. We discussed that customer retention is very, very important because today's marketing environment is very, very tough. There are almost the entire market has been divided into different segments by many different companies out there. Now, you could consider market as groups of people who are being targeted by different products and different product manufacturing companies simultaneously. So, end of the day, a consumer has many different options available with reference to particular series of products. So eventually it becomes very, very difficult for a new company or for an older company to get more and more new customers or new consumers. So emphasis is laid upon the basic fact that whatever existing customers a company has, they must maximize their profit potential from the existing customers. And they should provide them with such attractive services so that these customers would keep coming back to them over and over again. And that experience would replicate and spread in the entire market, and that's how new consumers would be gained over a longer time period when the previous consumers have been pretty much satisfied. So when we talk about customer retention, we talk about customer value as well. Because customer value, eventually it came to be found out that value is not just one-time process, because every time a customer comes to purchase a product, that's also not just one-time sale, because a customer will keep coming back and purchasing the product over a period of his or her lifetime. So there was a variation in the marketing concept in its basic shape, and the new variation was value retention focused marketing. According to value retention focused marketing, companies started developing better and better relationships with their consumers. And in doing so, they came up with very, very creative ideas to build up a stronger relationship with the customer so that customers would keep coming back to them over a longer time period. So this time around, companies were developing their marketing budgets considering the customer not just one-time sale, but considering the customer in its entirety of a lifetime, which means that you are not just spending money to attract the customer on one-time sales, but you are attracting the customer for a longer time period. Students, at this point, we also found out that some companies even went forward and developed a marketing concept and started using very, very smart techniques to retain their existing customers. And they found out in that process that all the customers are not always equal, because some customers provide you with more financial benefits than other customers. So there came another variation, which was profitability retention marketing. According to this, companies started dividing up their consumers in many different tiers according to their profitability levels. And the consumers who would provide more business to the company, they were provided with better services, and the consumers who would not provide much finances or financial revenue to the companies would provide them with standard services, but not substandard services. However, when it comes to the good consumers, always expedited customer services will be provided to them. This was more or less what we discussed in the chapter 1. At this point, I would, before taking you to the second chapter, I would like to give you a brief review of the consumer research as we discussed in the first chapter also. We briefly touched the topic of consumer research, and we just defined consumer research as different tools and methodologies that are used to study the consumer behavior. Students, in chapter number 2 that we are going to start, we will discuss the research methodologies in greater detail. So let me take you to the chapter number 2. Chapter number 2 has been divided into 4 main areas. The first main topic of chapter number 2 is consumer research paradigms. We touched these consumer research paradigms briefly in the chapter number 1 also. However, these research paradigms are qualitative research and quantitative research. We will also discuss that in many different situations, in order to attain objectives of the research, qualitative and quantitative research methods are combined. The second main topic of the chapter number 2 is consumer research process. We will start the topic of consumer research process by developing research objectives, which is basically drawing the map of the research. Where are we going to start? What are the objectives of the entire exercise that we are going to conduct, and how we are going to conduct it. We will then study collecting secondary data, and then we will discuss the concepts of syndicated data, customer profitability, and lifetime value data. The third topic of the chapter is designing primary research. In this main topic, we will discuss quantitative research design, observational research, experimentation, and surveys. We will then discuss the qualitative research, data collection instruments, as well as methodologies. And in that, we will discuss questionnaires and attitude scales. We will finally discuss qualitative research design and data collection instruments, which include depth interviews, focus group discussions, projective techniques, metaphor analysis, and sampling the data collection. And finally, we will discuss conducting a research study. So students, let us start our second chapter, consumer research. Before I take you into the basic details of the second chapter, let me give you a brief background of the consumer research. Students, owing to the earlier business paradigms, which included production concept, product concept, and selling concept, one thing was similar in the basic perception of the companies about the consumers. Companies were thinking that consumers are extremely logical people, and they are always making extremely rational decisions. Think about it. If we are going to the market, what comes to our mind? Most of the times when we are going to do some major shopping in the market, we are always thinking about two main objectives, which are, number one, that we will purchase some high quality products and number two, at the lowest possible price. This is very logical decision, and this maximizes value for us. And if we end up purchasing the products that are of high quality and we can purchase them at a very low price, then it goes in our favor. But however, every time we go to market, do you think that we end up purchasing the things that are of high quality and that we are purchasing on a low price? Is that so? Does it actually happen? Does our experience matches with this kind of logical calculation and logical thinking, or we do it in another way? To make you understand this, let me give you an example. Let's suppose there is a youngster, he wants to purchase a shampoo. And he has ample time by his side, so he goes to the market and enters in a superstore. In the superstore, there are many different products displayed and in many different shelves, and let's suppose that this is a very big store. The youngster enjoys himself walking through different shelves and walking through different corners of the store, and he eventually ends up into the shelves that are carrying different kinds of shampoos. Now, the first thing that he finds out over these shelves is that there are so many different kinds of shampoos available, and so much information is being provided about those shampoos that it's kind of very, very hard for him to make the decision of choosing the right kind of shampoo. So he decides to go and study different labels. Let's suppose that this youngster has a problem of dandruff, but when he goes through studying the labels of the shampoos, he finds out that even killing the dandruff is the ultimate objective of many different shampoos, but killing the dandruff can take place through many different routes. So there are different recipes in different shampoos. Some are natural, some are synthetic. Other than that, there are different customized shampoos for the dyed hair, or for the hair that are rough, or the hair that are silky or smooth. So his choice becomes a very, very complicated process. Now this youngster is thinking that he's going to purchase a shampoo that would provide him with best quality at the cheapest price. So he goes through sifting different shampoos, and eventually he ends up purchasing a shampoo. And he goes to the counter and pays the money for it, and guess what? this youngster purchases a shampoo that's very, very expensive and he's not too sure about the quality of this shampoo. Why did it happen with the youngster? Why would he purchase a shampoo that's more expensive, that would require him to stretch his budget limits, and even then he's not very sure about the quality of that shampoo? Let's suppose this youngster comes out of the superstore and he meets with a researcher standing at the door of the retail store, and he starts asking him questions as to why did he purchase this particular shampoo. The youngster, when he starts responding to this researcher, he starts giving him many different reasons that this shampoo is good because its quality is good, and I thought that since the quality of the shampoo is good, then I can pay a little more price for purchasing this shampoo. However, reality is entirely different. Consumer researchers, professing into the spirit of the marketing concept, started concentrating and researching more and more over identifying that why consumers make certain decisions. And they found out that consumers do not usually make calculated and logical decisions like they used to think about it before the marketing concept was being used by many different companies, or this concept was adopted by the business industry and in the entire world. They thought that, initially they thought that consumers were logical. However, when they conducted the research, they found out that consumers were not at all logical. Consumers are most of the times making very emotional decisions, and most of the times the reasons why they purchase a certain kind of product or a certain brand of product is the consumers are not consciously aware of those reasons. So let's talk about this youngster who purchased this shampoo. The real truth is that when this youngster sifted through different kinds of shampoos, he was studying their labels, and on labels there are different pictures of the models. The real fact is that this youngster ended up liking the picture of a certain model on the label of the shampoo so much that he was simply attracted towards purchasing it. And later on, when he purchased it, he wanted to rationalize his decision. When a researcher comes and he starts asking questions, that is the time when youngster needs to appear logical and reasonable. So he comes up with logical and reasonable answers to the researcher's questions. However, he is not willing to reveal the real reason, which is very, very emotional and sentimental. And if chances are, the youngster might start thinking that if I tell the researcher about my emotional reasons, then I might not be taken as a wise young man. So researchers found out that consumers most of the times are not making decisions based upon the logic or rational calculations. They are making decisions based upon their emotions, and a lot of times their decisions are based upon their unconscious desires and objectives and motivations. So this kind of understanding can be made in a very clear way by understanding one of the most powerful theories in the history of psychology, which was a personality theory, and it was called the theory of psychoanalysis. Let me give you a brief review of the theory of psychoanalysis, and before I give you some more examples about the unconscious drives and impulses, let me tell you what psychoanalysis is about. The Viennese psychologist Sigmund Freud developed the theory of psychoanalysis. Sigmund Freud was convinced that human beings do different things, not because they have motivations in their conscious minds, but most of the times human beings are not even aware that why are they behaving in a certain way. So this is more like we human beings are wishing animals. We are constantly wishing about different things, about doing different things. But it does not necessarily mean that our wishes will be fulfilled, or even our wishes will be acceptable to the society in which we exist. Let's suppose a child who does not like his teacher cannot become aggressive with his teacher because that is not a socially acceptable behavior. However, and the child comes to repress that urge to be aggressive with the teacher and throws it in his unconscious. However, when the things go in the unconscious, they do not die there, they actually stay there. To make you understand how unconscious drives and motivations impact us, let me give you yet another example. Let's suppose there was a gentleman who was recently promoted to the position of the sales manager. Before that, he had been working in the recipient positions, or as a person who is serving in a team and reporting to a certain boss. So when he was reporting to a boss and working with the team, all the skills that were required were to become a good team player. However, when this gentleman is promoted to become the boss, he immediately shifts into a leadership role. 6 months down the line, he finds out that he's not being able to meet with his sales targets successfully. And on top of that, his relationship with his colleagues is also not very good. This is very, very confusing for this youngster who has the track record of working very, very hard. He has the right kind of degrees and right kind of experience, and only taking into consideration all of these attributes, he was promoted to a certain position of seniority. However, his performance denies all that previous record of success and achievement. So the gentleman gets very confused and he decides to go to a psychoanalyst and find out what is the real reason. When he goes to a psychoanalyst, he tries to dig out his unconscious desires and motivations that are repressed in his unconscious. And he finds out that this youngster, when he joined on his first job, he started working with a boss who was extremely quick and trigger happy at finding out the mistakes and faults with this young man. Despite the fact that he was working very hard, and every time he will go to his boss showing his assignment, the boss will not concentrate over the good parts of his assignment, but will always point out the faults. This kind of behavior from his boss actually robbed this gentleman of his confidence. However, he was very tough and resilient, and he kept on working very, very hard. However, while working with this boss, he always had wish to be aggressive with his boss, which was not possible because that was not socially allowed. And even if he exhibited aggressive behavior with his boss, his job might have been at the stake. So he kept on working with this boss for the next 3 or 4 years with all those repressed anger hidden in his unconscious. And that anger did not die there. When this gentleman was promoted to the position of the sales manager, he was able to give vent to his repressed feelings of anger, and he chose unconsciously a very different method to vent his feelings of rage, and that was to behave exactly like his boss did. So when he started behaving exactly like his boss did, he was always find out faults and mistakes with his team members, which made him extremely unpopular. Team's morale had gone down, and the team building was not very, very good amongst the team members, which is why their sales targets were not being achieved, and they could not even make considerable sales. So once this gentleman realized through the help of the psychoanalyst about his repressed feelings in his unconscious, further psychoanalyst helped him bring out these repressed feelings into conscious and help him resolve these feelings. Eventually he was able to come to terms with the fact that he's angry and he's behaving like that, which is not very good for the team, and he changes his behavior. Another 2 months down the line, this gentleman starts performing as a sales manager. Students, I hope this example might have given you an understanding that because of the unconscious drives, we most of the times are doing things that we are not too sure why we are doing them. Similar is the case with the consumers. Consumers, a lot of times, while making their consumption-related decisions, they are not too sure that why they are purchasing a certain product or what is their basic interest, because their basic interest lies in their unconscious. Just like the boss story and just like the story of the youngster who went to purchase the shampoo, there were unconscious drives and motivations that compelled them to behave the way they did. Using the techniques of psychoanalysis to understand consumer behavior was started by yet another Viennese psychologist whose name was Ernest Dichter. He started using the psychoanalytic techniques to understand the consumers, and his basic thesis of research was to go to the consumers and interview them and ask them that why do they think they would be purchasing certain kinds of products and why they would not be purchasing certain other kinds of products. This kind of research came to be called motivational research. However, it could not be used until the widespread adoption of the marketing concept in the late 1950s by the business industry in Americas, in the European countries, and even in the entire world. So after the marketing concept came in strength and a lot of companies started using it, started using the Ernest Dichter's methodologies and techniques to understand the consumer behavior. So motivational research this time around was extremely useful and fashionable for different consumer research companies to understand that what are the hidden drives and motivations for the consumers while they are going through different consumption-related situations. So students, I hope you would have understood that through this basic briefing that understanding consumer behavior is not an easy task because consumers' decision-making process is extremely complicated, and a simple interview would not help us understand their consumer behavior because even consumers are most of the times not aware why they are making their consumption-related decisions. This is the time that we should now study the basic paradigms of consumer research. So let's formally define what consumer research is. We have done it earlier in the chapter 1. So at this point, let me just tell you that consumer research is a collection of different tools and methodologies that are used to study the consumer behavior. And we further identified in chapter number 1 that the field of consumer research proceeds through the implementation of two basic paradigms. These two basic paradigms are called qualitative research and quantitative research. So let me tell you about quantitative research, as you can see on the slide as well. Quantitative research is descriptive in nature. It is used to understand effects of various promotional inputs on the consumers. It is based on large sample, and the data could be generalized. Such research approach is known as positivism, and researchers primarily concerned with predicting consumer behavior are called positivists. Students, if you concentrate over the word quantitative research, you would find out that quantitative research is concerned with the quantity. We are mostly trying to understand or trying to get the information as to how many people or consumers out there are using a certain kind of product and what is their frequency. So essentially all the questions that are related to quantity will be answered in the quantitative research. Now, quantitative research helps researchers understand and describe a certain existing behavioral pattern. For example, we can find out the trends amongst the general population to do a master's degree program. And we can also find out trends amongst the population to start their job after their high school graduation degrees. All of these related informations we will get from the censuses that are conducted by the governments or the different marketing research agencies, or sometimes companies and different organizations, they go on conducting their own data as well. However, this kind of research approach is more and more useful in trying to describe the existing behavioral patterns. Students, now let me tell you about the different quantitative research methods that we will discuss in this chapter also. Different quantitative research methods that are used consist of experiments, survey techniques, and observations. We will discuss them in a section later on in much detail. However, at this point, just remember these three different techniques and tools that are used in quantitative research. If you concentrate on the word qualitative, you will find out that in qualitative research, we are more concerned with the quality of the response. When we are concerned with the quality of the response, we are not concerned with the quantity of the response. It means that the basic difference between quantitative and qualitative research is something like this. A company wants to find out that how many people use a certain kind of product is a question of quantitative research. A company wants to know that what is the frequency of the usage of certain product by the consumers is also quantitative research. However, when a company wants to find out that how much do the consumers like using a certain product, then this is essentially the question of qualitative research. Over here, we are concerned with the quality of the responses. So when we are talking about the quality of the responses, we can get the qualitative responses from a few people, which means that our sample could be very, very short. It could be consisting of only a few people. However, when we are collecting our sample for the qualitative research, we do it quite carefully in order to identify the participants of the study as the ones who represent the universal sample of the population. So, in qualitative research, we are more and more concerned with interpreting the existing behavioral patterns, not describing the existing behavioral patterns, which is why the researchers who go by this paradigm came to be called as interpretivists. Interpretivists tend to understand that what are the common behavioral patterns, what are the common operating values, and what are the different meanings and behaviors across different consumption-related situations. Students, qualitative and quantitative research methods, both of these are combined in order to achieve the objectives of a research. But certain kind of information will only be possible to be attained through the use of quantitative methods, and certain other kind of information can only be gathered up successfully and more effectively through the use of qualitative research methods. Before we go into the details, let me give you a brief example to understand that how quantitative and qualitative researches are combined. Let's suppose, for example, the government wants to launch an aggressive campaign against smoking. Already, every cigarette pack that is being manufactured in this country, a statement is printed upon that. The statement usually is, smoking is injurious to health. However, through the recent studies, the government finds out that more and more people are joining to become the smokers. There is an alarming growth in the rate of new smokers. Simultaneously, more and more teenagers are getting attracted towards smoking, and ladies are also growing in number who will become the smokers. So owing to these perceptions and these readings conducted through the quantitative research, they decide to launch a very aggressive campaign against the smoking. However, before they get into launching an aggressive campaign, they need to find out many different facts about the smokers. Only then they will be able to understand that what exactly can they do. Through their basic studies, they find out that smoking is extremely dangerous, and however, the exact dangers of the smoking are never communicated to the smokers. Owing to this point, they decide to come up with a new statement that could be printed upon the cigarette packs that would be carrying more threat perception and more element of threat for the smokers. They would also want to know that what should be the size of that statement which should be printed upon the cigarette pack, and on which side of the cigarette pack this statement should be printed. Now, one might think that a few intelligent and wise people may sit together and find out different statements and jot them down together, and then they could sit down with some designers to understand that what should be the best place a certain statement should be printed upon the pack of cigarettes. However, if we go by this approach, then our approach will be more based upon the wise guesses. It would not be based upon the exact information that is gained from the market. So in order to get into a research to understand what is the statement and where it should be printed, the government launches a marketing research campaign. The first part of the marketing research campaign is to understand and find out that what is the exact statement that carries the maximum level of threat for the smokers. In order to do that, they identify different kinds of groups that need to be thoroughly examined and interviewed in order to find out what is the best statement. These groups include, number one, smokers. And when we talk about the smokers, we are talking about the smokers from different socioeconomic categories. Essentially, the people who come from the lower socioeconomic categories, the threatening part of the cigarette is more grave and more dangerous for them, as they are smoking cheap cigarettes where the nicotine level and the tar level and the poisonous elements included in the cigarette are more, compared to the people who come from higher socioeconomic categories and they smoke extremely sophisticated cigarettes where the nicotine and tar level is kind of controlled. So when the government gets engaged into the study, they need to interview all of the different socioeconomic categories of smokers. This is group number one, which includes many different subgroups of the smokers. And when we talk about the subgroups of the smokers, we may also include the female smokers, the male smokers, the adult smokers, the youngsters smokers, people who have higher academic background, and they are also smokers, and people who are illiterate and they are also smokers. So we need to find out people from all these different categories of smokers. Simultaneously, we need to interview people who are the families of the smokers. These are their nearest and dearest ones who will be directly impacted if something goes wrong with the smoker, as well as when the smokers are smoking amongst their families, their families will be directly impacted with the negative effects of the smoking as well. Now, there should be a third group that also needs to be interviewed, and these are the medical professionals and the doctors who come across many different complaints and who actually see evidences of the dangerous impacts of the smoking in the hospitals and in their day-to-day clinics. So, the government decides with the marketing research that all these three main groups and subgroups will be properly and thoroughly interviewed in order to explore that what are the smoking related fears of the smokers, as well as what is the actual evidence available to fortify those fears amongst the smokers. So all these people are gathered up in groups and extensive focus group discussions are conducted with them. However, before conducting the focus group discussions, a complete guideline of the discussion is designed, which consists of many different questions. At the end of these focus group discussions, all the people, the participants of these studies are shown different statements that were previously designed, and simultaneously participants are stimulated to come up with more and more statements that they think should be more appropriate. And by the end of it, a poll could be conducted to find out the right kind of statement. So students, the first part of the research can only be carried out more and more effectively if qualitative research paradigm is used. However, to get into the second part of the research, where should we print the statement on the pack of the cigarettes, we need to conduct quantitative research. In order to find out what is the right place to print the statement on the pack of cigarettes, still we need to go to the consumers and ask their opinion on that. Consumers are the smokers. So we can print a number of questionnaires on which we can show the 6 different sides of a cigarette pack. Now, if you look at the cigarette pack, you'll find out that there are 6 different sides of a cigarette pack. And we can design the questionnaire in such a way that participants or respondents to the questionnaire, they could mark different places on the pack of cigarettes, on the pack of cigarette with reference to what is the most appropriate place where the statement could be printed. So a simple questionnaire will be consisting of the picture of a cigarette pack with 6 different sides, the picture of the cigarette pack shown from the 6 different sides, and statement printed upon that in different sizes. So this will end up in a number of questions, and participants or the respondents could mark different options and choices. Those different options and choices with reference to their effectiveness can be calculated, and it could be found out through the statistical analysis that which place has the largest average number of being marked as the most appropriate place to be printed upon the cigarette pack. So students, I hope you would have understood through this example that qualitative research and quantitative research both are combined in order to achieve the research objectives. At this point, let me show you that what is the consumer research process. As you could see on the slide, consumer research process starts with developing the objectives. After the objectives are developed, this gives us the basic map of the research, and after the map of the research has been found out, then the researchers go out to collect the secondary data. After collecting the secondary data, it is decided that either the research will be qualitative or quantitative. If the research design is quantitative, then methods, the sample of design, and data collection instruments are decided upon. After these things are decided upon, then in the next step, researchers go to find out or collect the primary data. After collecting the primary data has been analyzed and a report is finally prepared. If the design of the research is qualitative, once again the method has been decided upon, that which is the most appropriate route to find out this information. A screener questionnaire is designed, and a discussion guideline is prepared to be used in the focus group discussions. Let me tell you, the screener questionnaire consists of the basic questions that are asked from the respondents in order to identify from which category of consumers do they belong to. If they are not included into the category of consumers that is being studied, then the interview is closed with them and they are excluded from the study. After, in the next step, the research is conducted using highly trained interviewers who would thoroughly interview the respondents or the participants of the study. After that, all of the interviews are transcribed and data is achieved, and data is finally analyzed in order to prepare the final report. You could find out the dotted line that points out from the preparation of report to the designing of quantitative research once again. A lot of times it happens that the findings of qualitative research actually give us the clue to conduct a major and mega quantitative study. However, sometimes before we get into the main quantitative study, we have to conduct an exploratory study in order to find out that what are the basic issues. Students, I hope you would have understood the process, the basic consumer research process. At this point, let me tell you what are the different steps included in the consumer research process. The different steps of consumer research process are something like this. Number one, defining the objectives of research. As we have discussed it before, defining the objectives of research is very, very important because this lays down the basic map of the research. Number two is collecting and evaluating secondary data. Secondary data is the data that is being collected by different organizations on regular terms and regular basis, and this data points out to important directions in the consumer trends. On the step number three, the primary research study. The primary research study is the basic objective of the research that needs to be achieved. So on this, we identify that what is the main data that we need to get from the target consumers. The next step is analyzing the data. After we have the data, we analyze it to find out the existing trends, and finally the reports are prepared on the findings that were gained through the research analysis. So students, let's talk about designing the research objectives. Designing the research objectives is the first step, and over here it is decided that what is the research being carried out for. There could be many different reasons for which the research is being carried out. For example, the research could be segment the market for the bicycles, which means that the research is concerned with identifying that which category of the people in the market are using bicycles, or how a bicycle can be effectively marketed in a particular segment. The research might be to understand the consumer attitudes about online shopping, or it could be about determining how many households use emails. Carefully designed statements of the objectives help define the level of information that is required from the research study. On the second step, we get into the purpose of the study. It is very important to identify the main purpose of the study because it will also tell us that what kind of research paradigm will be used eventually. Is it the qualitative research or the quantitative research? Purpose of study determines the research that will be undertaken. There are certain situations in which qualitative research is used and certain other situations in which quantitative research patterns are used. For example, if the purpose of study is to come up with new ideas for promotional campaigns, then qualitative study is more useful. However, if the purpose of the research is to find out how many respondents use certain products and at what frequency, then quantitative research is used. Exploratory research is used when researchers are not too sure about the real issues. So in order to acquaint themselves with the real issues, they would like to conduct a small study before getting into the big-time main study. Such kind of research may also be called the pilot research or the pilot project. In exploratory studies, researchers come to understand different issues or different consumption-related issues that need to be studied and explored thoroughly and deeply through a major study. For example, a company wants to launch a mosquito killer. Before they get into launching the mosquito killer, they need to get to know that what are the consumer issues with reference to the usage of the mosquito killers. Since they are not properly aware of the issues, then they might like to conduct an initial study in an area where a lot of rains take place, and this area happens to be marshy, which is why there are a lot of mosquitoes. So they will get into this area and try to understand the basic behavioral patterns with reference to the problem of the mosquitoes. This will help them find out the real issues with reference to different kinds of mats that mats that are being used to kill the mosquitoes, and then they can design their real product in that would be more effective than the products out there in the competition. The next step of the research is collecting the secondary data. Secondary information is data originally generated for some purpose rather than the present research objectives. Data generated in-house for earlier studies or customer information collected by the firm's sales or credit departments usually are included in such kind of data. Secondary data is always collected because it also points out in certain directions. It helps researchers narrow down their options. After the secondary information has been collected, the next step is to engage into the main research and gather up primary research. Primary research is conducted to find out information that would help the companies make their strategic decisions. Students, this is the end of the lecture number 6, and I leave you with this today. In our next lecture, we will discuss the subsequent parts of the chapter in more detail. At this point, let me say goodbye to you. अपना अपने गिरदो नमा के लोगों का, अपने दोस्तों का और घर वालों का ख्याल रखिएगा। अल्लाह हाफिज़।